From the rocky wastes of Tarkir, the Mardu horde thrives on battle, but they also seem to thrive on expensive cards. Try putting a Mardu mid-range deck together. You're looking at about $700 to $750. Fearsome warriors? More like fearsome pricing. So, I'm beginning to see a trend here. We're in red, right? So we need a playset of Rabble-Masters. And we're also gonna need some Sarkans and or Stormbreaths, just like every other deck running red right now. And since we're in black and white, let's make sure we've got more Planeswalkers in there. Sorin and Elspeth are serious business, so they're must-haves, but they're also serious cash. Did I forget any other expensive cards in our colors? Oh, that's right, the costly kitty of Brimaz. What about support spells? Well, since this is mid-range, I'm gonna say Anger of the Gods is a must, as is Crackling Lightning and Thoughtseize. It just wouldn't be black if you can't turn one Thoughtseize, right? And yet another mana base that costs more than some people make in a week. Playset of fetches, the usual assortment of Pain and Scrylands, and throw in a few mana confluences just to keep the tab high. I guess it's true what they say, go big in Mardu or go home. Well, I've got another way to go, and that's under. That's right, don't let the Mardu horde raid your wallet. If all your opponents are in mid-range these days, then beat them to the middle with a Mardu Rush aggro deck. Mardu Rush takes advantages of low-cost, high-efficient creatures in the hopes of destroying your opponent before their deck even has a chance to come online. Best of all, it can be built for about $100. Mid-range decks start out slow and come online turn 4 to 5 typically. In an environment where mid-range is the majority, Mardu Rush attempts to bring our opponents from 20 to 0 life as quickly as possible, rather than emphasize a long-term game plan. How can Mardu Rush do all this and still keep its budget at $100? Let's take a look. Blood-Soaked Champion, Soldier of the Pantheon, and Tormented Hero are all 2/1 creatures for 1. They're the ideal turn 1 drop, each with their own added boost as well. The champion can return to the battlefield with Raid. Very handy, especially if we plan to have a lot of creature sacrifice later. And we do. The Soldier has protection from multicolored built in, and anytime your opponents cast a multicolored spell, you gain a life. Finally, the Tormented Hero takes a life from your opponents and gives it to you whenever you target it with a spell. What spell might we be targeting him with in this deck? Titan's Strength, of course. If your hero makes it through to your opponents and you can cast Titan's Strength on him, then your opponent stands to lose 6, that's right, 6 life. You even gain 1 life as icing on the cake, not to mention the ability it gives you to scry. Potentially losing 6 life on turn 2 puts your opponent immediately on a ticking clock. Alright, so dropping one of those 3 on turn 1, what's our turn 2 drop? Our choices are to have, perhaps, a Chief of the Edge, who will give our other warriors +1 to attack. Both the Blood-Soaked Warrior and the Tormented Hero are warriors, so even without Titan's Strength, by casting a Chief of the Edge on turn 2, our 1-drop warrior is now swinging for 3 damage. What else might we do turn 2? Warname Aspirant, also a warrior by the way, is a 3/2 for only 2 if you can trigger Raid. Your attack doesn't even need to hit, just attacking regardless of success ensures we're bringing out a 3/2 on turn 2. The fact that it can't be blocked by creatures with power 1 or less means everything from Caryatids to those pesky sheep won't be able to get between us and our opponents. So right now, most mid-range players, especially those in red, are probably shouting, "Anger of the Gods!" at their computer screens. And it's true that Anger is one of our biggest threats because it's going to wipe our board clean. Luckily, turn 3 is when we begin to protect ourselves. The Mardu Ascendancy should essentially read, sacrifice to counter Anger of the Gods. Giving our creatures a +3 boost to defense ensures our army isn't getting wiped as long as we can successfully cast this turn 3. If we are not defending against Anger, then we can go on the offense with Crackling Doom. This can also be safe for turn 5 or so, where their big baddies are likely going to start showing up and putting major pressure on us. What else in the way of spells? Our best approximation of a good old-fashioned lightning bolt, Lightning Strike, gives us the ability to fry early game threats, such as a Fleecemane Lion, or we can just hold it in hand for that last bit of blast to finish our opponents off. So here we are at turn 4, hopefully having given our opponents a solid thrashing before much of their deck has come online. No, we're not going to wait for a turn 5 Storm Breath. That's right, in Mardu Rush, Storm Breath is too slow. Turn 4 is when our finisher drops, the Butcher of the Horde. With the army of warriors we've amassed, or perhaps tokens from our Ascendancy, it should be no trouble at all to sack for haste, sack for lifelink, and even sack for vigilance if need be. Blood-Soaked Champion and Butcher are best friends. Technically, if you have the mana available, you can sack the champion to the Butcher, attack with the Butcher, and then before it hits, you can now use Raid to bring the champion back to the battlefield at instant speed, only to sacrifice it again, still all before damage has been dealt, to give Butcher another perk such as lifelink. Finally, we have a surprise for if our board somehow stalls out. Tymaret the Murder King is a 2 of. Not that bringing him in early is that disappointing, seeing as he's still a 2/2 for 2. But his ability to sack creatures to shock our opponents for 2 mana is often the last little push we need to finish the game. Like previous budget decks, the biggest cuts are in the mana base. It is absolutely critical that we have black and white mana available turn 1, as those are the colors of our turn 1 drops. So I'm going to say a complete playset of Caves of Koilos, as well as some swamps and plains, are something we can't afford to scrimp on. And even though it is $10, I'm going to include at least 1 Battlefield Forge, taking a point of damage to ensure we don't miss any of the mana we need for early game rush is just so crucial to the deck. This is also the first place you are going to turn to for upgrades. Ideally, there should be playsets of the Battlefield Forges as well as a playset of Bloodstained Mires. And if you already own a Mana Confluence, sure, throw one of those in. If I were a gambling man, which I'm not, I'd bet my money that Mardu sees more play over the next year as a control deck rather than a mid-range aggro. But in the meantime, if red, white, and black are the colors you dream of, be sure to raid the battlefield and not your wallet with a Mardu Rush deck to outrun your mid-rangey enemies. But maybe for you, Mardu is more of a Mar-don't. If so, stay tuned, because I'm covering budget builds for all 5 of the clans. I hope very much these videos have been helpful to you. You can help me out by remembering to subscribe, like, share, or even just by leaving a comment. And remember, you can't play Magic at Target or Walmart, so whenever possible, try and spend your money where you spend your time playing Magic. That's at your local game store.